Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast of Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I am joined here, as always, by the man who thinks that your team did the best they could in free agency. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I do have a lot of winners set up for today, so maybe I'm being too nice, but doing good, pretty good overall. NFL free agency is rolling. Still reeling a little bit from last night in Team USA picking up that L, but fun tournament nonetheless.
Kyle, I got to be honest. I like the World Baseball Classic. I think it's cool that it exists. I kept up with it. Did not watch a game.
That's unfortunate. It was really good. I watched a lot of it, and I got to say, I didn't love the discourse that you had to be either a pro World Baseball Classic or anti World Baseball Classic person. It just got ridiculous. But I do have to say, it helps when your team's good. But this is probably the most fun I had watching baseball in 4.5 years.
Wow.
Which coincidentally is when the Red Sox last won a World Series, but that's besides the point. This tournament was awesome, I thought. All the games were really interesting. Everybody was really fired up for everything. I mean, the Randy Arozarena play where he's just stone cold staring after robbing a home run. All of it was incredible stuff.
Randy Arozarena, the ultimate showman.
He certainly loves attention, that's for sure. He loves the camera on him. But yeah,
he had a couple of the, I feel like taking a bad angle and then making a jumping catch ones, I thought.
Yeah, just, you got to show off a little. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Big fan of that. We are not here to talk about the World Baseball Classic. We are here to talk about the NFL free agency. We touched on the big storylines last week. So if you want to hear us kind of go more in depth on the Aaron Rodgers stuff and all that stuff, check that out. It's on this channel. But we decide, today, more of a deep dive. Going to try to get into just what happened, going team by team. We're going to go alphabetically here. That's the order. Should be I think it should be an interesting show.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting show. Plenty to talk about. We like to pride ourselves on going through all 32 teams and making sure everyone's included, even teams like the Texans. But yeah, we're going to have plenty to talk about everybody. There's a lot to get into this offseason. Pretty wild offseason overall.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a lot of intrigue. Want to just jump into it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, and also, sorry for showing up at an unusual time at 4 o'clock instead of our typical 5 o'clock Eastern. I mean, for the people that manage to tune in every week, God bless them, because we don't make it easy for them with our scheduling.
No, we do not, but we do appreciate it. And, if you don't tune in live, tune in after the fact. That works too. We appreciate that as well.
Yeah. It's fun either way, I think. But yeah, appreciate, again, also make sure you follow the account page on Twitter. That's the best way to make sure that you can tune in live. But yeah, anyways, the Cardinals here in a tough spot. The Arizona Cardinals, third worst team in football last year. Not a ton of room for improvement. It made some interesting moves in free agency. With the Kaiser White addition, they keep Calvin Beachum. You have Will Hernandez, Matt Prater. I don't know. I guess winners for the Cardinals, but I don't feel strongly either way about them.
I actually went losers for them. I think Beacham's on a pretty good value there, and I think White's a pretty decent player too. But I don't know. I look at those top two free agents they lost, and it's Zach Allen's 25 and Byron Murphy's 25, and I don't think they're either superstar players. But if you can't find a way to bring Byron Murphy back on $8.5 million a year and $8.75 million a year, and Zach Allen back on $15-16 million a year, well, to me, it's just what's the point of doing business then, right? Those are good young players, solid young players. and you just let them go. Obviously they have to agree to sign to those guys, but at the same time, like, I don't know, those seem like pretty good players that you'd want to bring back to your organization.
Are they that good though? Like, I think that I don't know if I'm missing either of those contracts.
I don't know. I think Byron Murphy is not as good as some of his highs were. Like, you had those moments where he was discussed among like the best corners in the league because he shut down um, Cooper Cup for half a game or something like that. He's not that good, but at
Right.
the same time, a 25-year-old who can still like hang with Cooper Cup for half a game, I think is a pretty decent football player. Zach Allen, I think, is a pretty decent football player for 25 years old. Like, how are you not working to keep those guys on the roster?
Fair enough. I'm not gonna. I don't. I guess I don't know if any of these moves really move the needle too much for me.
Yeah, and I don't think the signings either made the needle too much. Like, I think Kelvin Beacham's a pretty good tackle. Or not pretty good. He's a fine tackle, and they got him on
Mhm.
good value. I think White's a fine linebacker, and they got him on pretty good value. But I don't know. I look at two young, kind of promising players and say, why not like just work to keep those guys too?
Yeah, I don't know. Fair enough. With them, I don't necessarily hate letting them walk. I think sometimes you gotta let players walk, but I'm not gonna fight you too much on it. You want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling.
Okay, let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons are an interesting one. They spent some money. They had some money to spend.
Mhm.
They spent some money. They keeping Christian Lindstrom. They added David Onyemata, the former New Orleans Saints. Added Jesse Bates, a safety, good safety from the Cincinnati Bengals. Re-signed Caleb McGarry. Added Taylor Heineke, which is interesting. Traded for Jonnu Smith. Again, I don't know if these are massively moving the needle for me. I think I'm going to go winner with them as well. Look at me being the positive one. With just Jesse Bates, I think that makes their secondary interesting. He's a young player and a star player, so I think I'm going to give them a W here.
Yeah, that feels like a win, especially when the secondary was so bad last season. And I mean, look, I mean, having McGarry and Matthews, I think, is a really nice luxury to have as a team, right? Like, McGarry is a good player. $11.5 million is a pretty good deal for what he provides at that right tackle spot. So I think those are all pretty good signings. Um, yeah, I mean, the one thing is, like, you could say this is a team that's a very obvious Lamar Jackson team, and as far as right now, they haven't shown any interest in Lamar Jackson. But you know, I don't know I don't think you can judge it based on they didn't go after Lamar Jackson or they haven't gone after Lamar Jackson yet. We don't know if that's actually happening, what the speculation is or anything like that. I know that, the reports are they're not interested, but that'd be the one thing you kind of nitpick. But overall, yeah, I think it's a win, and getting a player of basis quality on your defense is a success.
Yeah, that's a to be determined. I agree, and I would say as well. I don't know if I love the David Onyemata contract, like over $10 million. I think he's a solid player. It's a bit much. Again, it's not a crazy deal or anything, but that's a bit much. I also do wonder. So is Taylor Heineke our quarterback next year? Like that's the concern with the Falcons. Is you kind of touched on it. They haven't addressed the quarterback position, and you haven't. Maybe you get Lamar and it looks amazing, but as of right now. If we end up with Taylor Heineke next year, there is a bit of, I think you're going to start to wonder a bit like, okay, what are we really doing here with Atlanta?
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I mean, did you see anything from Ritter where you're willing to give him one more chance, or do you think it's done?
He was, I mean, I liked Ritter coming out of college, I think more than you did. He was really bad last year. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a fine, plan B. You have him on your roster, maybe something happens, but I wouldn't go into the season saying this is Desmond Ritter's year.
Yeah, it's so tough because, like you said, I wasn't very high on him in the draft, but at the same time, like, it feels really harsh to draft a guy and then decide 4 games later that it's not going to work. And it
Hmm.
wasn't like a Nathan Peterman like 4 games. Like,
Right.
he wasn't that bad. He was, I would say okay-ish. Like,
I thought he was really bad last year. Not
yeah,
Nathan Peterman, but I thought he was really bad last year.
yeah, that's fair. But I just like I don't know. That feels a little harsh. But at the same time, that's also the business of the NFL sometimes.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The Baltimore Ravens here, and I should mention, I said alphabetically. We're going alphabetically by city, so that's why this works. But yeah, anyways, Ravens they lost a couple pieces like Ben Powers and Josh Oliver. On top of it, I think the way that the Lamar Jackson situation has played out, to me, they're losers simply because of that.
Yeah, the optics of it are still not great. And I mean, there's still guys on this team that I thought were pretty valuable last season that, I don't know if they're going to come back. It's still to be determined, but you know, I don't think this team losing Marcus Peters, if they do lose him, feels like a kind of big deal. Calais Campbell's obviously, very good. Justin
Mhm.
Houston, I mean, there's a lot of guys on this roster that still need to be addressed that they haven't really addressed. And that, doesn't even add into the optics of the Lamar Jackson situation, where that's all in flux and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if he's playing for this team this year. So yeah, this is an L for me. Um, like obviously, if Lamar ends up playing for this team and they work out that contract and everything's fine, this team's still going to be good. But I don't think it's been a productive offseason for sure.
Right, and really, the reality is they have issues they need to address as well. Like outside of the Lamar Jackson situation, like they still need a receiver.
Yes, they still need a receiver.
Hmm.
I think they're going to need help on the defense with all those guys that are still free agents. And you know what? Ben Powers is a good player too. I mean, so they lost good players. They didn't really add anything of substantial value unless you really rate Trayvon Mullen. I do not.
Hmm.
It's just like I don't know. There's a lot of issues to me there.
I'll say this: if tomorrow it's announced they sign Lamar to a long-term deal, I'm putting them in winners. I think it's that to me that situation matters so much to me.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But we
Mhm.
don't know if that's going to happen or when that's going to happen.
Right, exactly. The Buffalo Bills here. Buffalo Bills. Yeah, so got to move kind of quickly. 32 teams to cover here, and we do an hour show, so
Yeah.
we're only gonna do a couple minutes for each team. But yeah, Buffalo Bills again. A lot of names, a lot of under chart of things they've done. Not a lot of big names here. It's hard to really feel. There isn't like a ton here. Obviously, the big one, I think, losing Tremaine Edmonds. That's the biggest thing.
Mhm.
So for me, it's a loss because I think he was really good last year. A real part of that team. Again, they've done some nice things as well. I like the Trent Sherfield addition. I think that's interesting. But they lost Devin Singletary as well. Re-signed Jordan Poyer. That helps them. But again, I think Connor McGovern should be interesting for them. But losing Edmonds, that puts you as a loss for me.
Yeah, I think they lost a decent amount of talent on this roster, and obviously getting a guy like Poyer back I think helps, but at the same time, yeah, I do think it's a slight loss for me. Like it wasn't enough really to move the needle on my judgment of this team. I still think they're going to be really good next year, but if I'm
Mhm.
just looking at these moves individually, I think it's overall a loss.
Yeah, and it's also one of the things too where kind of entering the offseason, we felt like it was going to be a slight loss, right? Like so they kind of
Yeah.
met their expectations.
Yeah, I think they weathered the storm better than better than we thought they potentially could. There's a chance that if they lost like Poyer and Edmonds, then I'm a little worried about next season, right?
Yeah, I think that, and I really do think Edmonds was underrated last year. I think that he had a really good year, but I agree that it's they still should be very good next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that Milano's the better linebacker anyways, and Milano's a terrific football player, but that
Uh
doesn't
huh.
take away that Edmonds is still awesome too.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. Let's move on. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers because they're one that we can spend some time talking about if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big move is the trade, trading up to pick number one, which is it's a decision you can make, and if they hit, they will look like geniuses and they will have no regrets. And obviously, if they miss, well, then that puts them back a little bit. Some other interesting free agent moves. There's still Matt Ioannidis, who's a free agent who they could sign, but they've added Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, Von Bell, Hayden Hurst, Shy Tuttle. They re-signed Bradley Bozeman. Also added Andy Dalton, who should be kind of their bridge quarterback, we assume. So there's interesting moves here for them, and I struggle with this, because I don't know if I don't know how much Thielen and Sanders are moving the needle for me. I do like the Hayden Hurst move, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like you just traded up for first overall pick. You want to put your young quarterback in the best situation possible. We kind of saw with like the Christian Kirk contract. Was that an overpay? Yeah, probably was, but they helped out Trevor Lawrence's development. That's probably what the Panthers are doing here. I'll go win here. Why not?
I do have it as well, it's a win, but it's more of like a to be determined. Like if we had a TBD or like a neutral, this would probably be the closest one to it
Uh
because
huh.
it's one of those things where if the guy if whoever they draft, let's say it's CJ Stroud. If CJ Stroud's awesome, you know, then this offseason is a major win. If the quarterback they draft sucks, then obviously it's a huge problem because not only did they draft someone number one who's not good, they mortgaged a lot of their future picks for someone who's not good,
Mhm.
and gave up on a player like DJ Moore, who I still think is he's a solid football player. The big thing that comes down to this is does their quarterback good? And then you know, I think, giving up on a guy like Moore, I think getting a guy like Thielen's going to help. I think Sanders is going to help. Him and Hubbard, I think, are a pretty nice back duo. If Aquanu gets a little bit better in year two, I do think this could be, and I like Hayden Hurst too. That's the other guy. I forgot about him.
Mhm.
I do think if like that offensive line develops a little bit with some of their younger guys, like this could be an okay offense if their rookie quarterback's good. There's obviously a little bit of lacking star talent after trading Moore and McCaffrey over the last year. But I do think that could be a solid, workable offense next season. I do think they got a lot better on defense, though. Chin and Bell are going to be a really fun safety duo to watch. Those guys fly around. I think I'm really excited for that. And, Tuttle's fine. I think he fits into this defense pretty well. So I do like those moves on the defensive side of the ball, which make it a win for me.
Yeah, I made a video on the Adam Thielen thing. I think the more I think about it, the more I don't love that deal. I think he's older than people realize. He's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 next year. And while 14 million guaranteed doesn't seem like a lot, the way it's structured, if they cut him after 2 years, they're still sitting at 5 million in dead cap, and to cut him after one, it's 11 million in dead cap. Feels like there's a very low chance that he finishes that contract. But again, I think they're maybe okay with that because they're trying to make sure that their young quarterback is good right now. The one thing I'll say with the Panthers is, I don't know, before the trade, they're way more exciting after the trade than before the trade. Like the prospects of the Panthers and like their Super Bowl aspirations in the next couple of years, I feel like have gone up, even if the ceiling of this team or the floor of this team has gone down as well.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you're looking for, 2017, 2018 Adam Thielen production, you're just not going to be satisfied with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like a guy who basically always catches the ball when he's open, that's a plus for a rookie quarterback. And a
Mm-hmm.
guy who's pretty good in the red zone still, despite all of his deficiencies now as an older player, I think that's pretty good for a rookie quarterback too. Like those are things that I think can help a young quarterback succeed. So I think that's something that definitely they can build upon and help him get forward. They do need a draft receiver though, without a doubt. Like I know they obviously are going to get quarterback one. They got to look third, fourth round and find a pretty good receiver there.
Yeah. Interesting stuff from them. Let's go to the team that they traded traded the ninth overall pick to, along with DJ Moore and several other pieces. The Chicago Bears, who also added Tremaine Edmonds. They added Nate Davis as well. Demarcus Walker, TJ Edwards, they lost David Montgomery, excuse me. But this is a team that's been busy. Obviously, I think we all liked the trade and what they were able to get out of it. So this is a winner as well.
Yeah, I really like this. I really like this offseason as well. I mean, they didn't have a need for quarterback at number one, so it made sense for them to trade back. They get more assets for a team that was very kind of asset deprived on their roster last season. Um, and I mean, I just looked top to bottom of their roster and what they did, and all of these seem like pretty good moves. I mean, I do have questions about paying off-ball linebackers when your defense around it is so bad. But I do think if the question is, are the Chicago Bears better right now than they were at the start of the offseason? It's a 100% emphatic yes. Like this is a way better team than it was last season. So I do have to chalk that up as a win. And yeah, I mean, they're going to probably add to the defensive side of the ball with that first pick in the draft at number 9. And then, got to build up a little more on that offensive line too.
Zachary Stewart in the comments with a super chat. We appreciate that, Zachary. Thoughts on Fields saying he doesn't play well in the cold and doesn't want to long term. Kyle, are we just in a few years going to just have 32 domes?
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that was an owner thing because he's trying to get this land for the Dome Stadium or whatever, right? He's trying to get the approval for the Dome Stadium, right?
I guess so. I guess that's a good point.
Maybe the owner's just saying, you know what? If you want to endorse the Dome and endorse this project, feel free to say yes.
Yeah, potentially. Bears also added Robert Tonyan, which feels like just a move to give the middle finger to the Packers.
Yeah. pretty much. I don't know. All of it was fine. I mean, I like Montgomery a little bit, but I think, I'm not going to lose sleep over losing a running back. Riley Reef, I guess, was one player, they kind of valued, if you listen to their GM's comments on Reef, they kind of valued what he did last season. And, he's not a terrible right tackle. That's probably someone they would have liked to have back, especially with the way that offensive line is just not productive.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with that. Let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals, who their big move was adding an offensive lineman, Orlando Brown Jr. for a shockingly low $16 million a year contract. They obviously lost Jesse Bates, which hurts. They lost Von Bell, which hurts. They lost Hayden Hurst, who didn't really, I think, do as much as we expected him to do in a Bengals uniform, but still, that's not something you love to see walk out the door. Jermaine Pratt, they were able to re-sign, and I like that move. We also have, Eli Apple, still a free agent, who has shown flashes in that system. I'm really conflicted on this because I like Orlando Brown Jr. a lot, and I think that was a good move, but I don't know. I think I'm still going to end up going lost here just because I think Bell and Bates were a big part of what made that defense successful. And, I don't think that they could get away with, even if they re-sign Eli Apple, I don't think Eli, who I didn't think was particularly great last year, I think could really expose him next year if he doesn't have great safety help around him.
I agree. I have this as a slight loss. I mean, look, I do think Orlando Brown is a good left tackle, despite what Chiefs fans try and tell you that Jawan Taylor's better.
Right.
Despite no semblance of a fact that he's proven to be better. I do think Orlando Brown's a good player. I think this all of a sudden becomes, what was a real problem two years ago with this offensive line. When you're looking at a group with Alex Kappa, Orlando Brown Jr., Lyle Collins when he's healthy, Ted Karras, that is a pretty good offensive line all of a sudden. Potentially very good offensive line. And you know what? The best thing to do when you can't, block Sam Hubbard for Orlando Brown Jr. is to play with Sam Hubbard. So that helps them. And Trey Hendrickson. Sorry, that was the other guy too. But so that really works for them. But yeah, this defense, I have some questions about how this is going to look going forward, especially without Bates and Bell. I thought they would at least be able to bring one of those guys back. Instead, they brought neither of those guys back. This is going to put a lot of pressure on their 2 draft picks last season. Dax Hill and Cam Taylor-Britt. Cam Taylor-Britt showed some stuff at the end of the year. Dax Hill didn't play a whole lot in his rookie season. So those 2 guys have got to show that they're ready to be productive for this defense to hold up and what they've been doing all, for a while now. This defense has been good the last couple of years. They got to really prove it that those 2 guys are ready to step into bigger roles and be better players, because if those guys work out, if those are good draft picks, then this will work out just fine. Cam Taylor-Britt looked pretty good. I still believe in Dax Hill's talent. Throw in Awuzie when he's healthy. That's still a pretty good secondary, but we got to see it from those 2 guys.
Yeah. Don't disagree. Let's go to their division rival, the Cleveland Browns, who, I don't know, have been making some odd moves, I guess. They, go after like Dalvin Tomlinson, Juan Thornhill, a player from Houston who I cannot pronounce his name. They had, a couple of, interesting pieces. I like the Jordan Atkins signing as like a flyer, but I don't know. I just don't really get what they're doing necessarily. Trying to improve the defense, which was weirdly not as good as we thought it would be last year. But these aren't contracts I think are like great or anything. So I guess I'm gonna go lost. But like, I don't know. Like, these players should be fine in their roles as well. So I guess I view this as neutral. And I guess the reality is, if it's a neutral move, it's probably a loss because other teams are getting better.
Yeah. They added Elijah Moore too today, so that helps.
That's true. Yeah, that's
I
not
do
on my
like
list,
that
but yeah.
move actually.
Mhm.
I
Interesting.
actually
I was surprised they gave up so much for him, to be honest. I thought that a second was a little bit high.
but they get a third back, so I mean,
Oh, okay, I missed that. Okay,
yeah,
well that makes it a lot better.
yeah, it's more in a third for a second, so that feels like a win for a trade for me. It's
Yeah, I would
just
say
kind of
so as well.
offloading.
Mhm.
I actually am chalking this up as a win slightly, and a lot of this is because I watched that defense last year, and I mean, Myles Garrett played through injuries for a lot of the year, it sounded like, and I give him a ton of credit. He's still a terrific player. That defense seemed soft as hell to me. That just
Mhm.
looked like a soft defense. It looked like they didn't want to hit. It looked like they didn't want to be physical, and they just bleeded rushing yards last season. For a group that you looked at on paper, should have been a lot better than what it was. So the best way to solve toughness is to go add guys, I think, like, Dalvin Tomlinson, Juan Thornhill, and Okoronkwo as well. I think that's going to help. I think that's going to help this defense play a lot better this season. I don't think they can be as soft as they were last season. And yeah, it feels like I think on paper you look at it like I like John Johnson, and I think Clowney still has a ton of talent, and losing those guys hurts. But at the same time, I just think that whatever combination of players they had last season clearly weren't working for them, and it didn't look like it on the field either. And I think they needed a little bit of a revampment, and I think they did that. So that's a win for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. Why don't we? Dallas, this is a win for me, Kyle, because
Oh yeah.
I thought going in, the Cowboys could be in a rough shape. They had some real. I don't get why they couldn't re-sign Dalton Schultz. I didn't think he went for that much. He only went for a 1 year, $9 million deal. Feels like they could have found a way to make that work. But the way that they were able to really through trades make things happen, I thought. Where I love the Brandon Cooks and the Stephon Gilmore trades. And those are really the main reasons why I'm optimistic about it. I think keeping Leighton Vander Esch was good. I think franchise tagging Tony Pollard, but not signing him to a long-term deal is smart. They got out. Losing Ezekiel Elliott, I do think hurts. I think he has value, just not
Yeah.
anywhere near what his contract was. But as a whole, I think this is the win for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. I do think that combination of, Pollard's size and Elliott's, toughness, physicality was a good combo for that backfield. But that being said, if they drafted Tank Bigsby in like the 5th round, I think they can get the same thing they got out of Elliott, honestly. I think Elliott was pretty good blocking and pass catching, which I think is going to be missed, but I do think they can find ways to replace that. But I do, yeah. I mean, this is a home run win for me because, like you said, those buy low moves on a guys like Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks are really going to help this offense. We talked about how Michael Gallup did not look up to speed to be that number 2 option for this team last season. Well, they hit a home run on that number 2 option. Brandon Cooks going to be awesome in that role next to CeeDee Lamb. You look at Stephon Gilmore, like he's their best corner right now. Like I know we've gone back and forth on Trevon Diggs. I think he's a big player, which I think has a tremendous amount of value, even if down to down he struggles. Well, they have the down to down cornerback who's going to be really good now in Stephon Gilmore, and it probably gives more opportunities for Diggs to make big plays. So they add that. They keep Wilson in that secondary too. They keep Van Der Esch at that linebacker spot, and then the last part of this is the Dalton Schultz equation, which I mean, in a smaller role, I thought Jake Ferguson was actually pretty good. Like, I think Jake Ferguson's going to be pretty solid. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft another tight end too. But I do think this is an absolute win for me for Dallas and what they did this offseason.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, Kyle, our arguments about Eagles versus Cowboys, when we get to the season preview, it's going to be electric.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of conversations there for sure. NFC East looks fun all of a sudden. Look at that.
Yeah, incredible. You got 2 good teams, a team that thinks they're good, and then whatever Washington's doing.
Hey, maybe they make a Lamar Jackson play, and all of a sudden it's a 3-team race.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Poor Giants fans.
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, Washington might be getting new owners soon. There's nothing you could say that could bring them down right now.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair. The Denver Broncos building over. I don't know if we count Sean Payton as part of this offseason. I guess we could. I mean, why not? Clearly they're Sean Payton-ifying this team of building the offensive line. It's what they like to do. They got your guy, Zach Allen. This is I guess a win because I see what they're trying to do, and they did a better job at they accomplished what they're trying to do. So I'll give them a win for that.
Yeah. I would definitely include the Sean Payton part of this for this offseason because they traded a pick for it, for sure. Now, here, I guess the thing is like, this goes back to my Bears point where it's like, if you look at the money they spent, like this is definitely going to be a thing where 2 or 3 years down the line, we're going to be looking at this Broncos situation and be like, well, they kind of, spent all their capital. They went all in a couple of years ago, and this is where they're at now. But that being said, if the question right now is this Broncos team better than they were in January, it's 100% a yes. They're a better team, so that's a win for me. And I think the difference between this and the Bears is they kind of had to go all in because they've gone kind of half in with this Russell Wilson thing in this contract. So it makes sense for them to go all in with this group and try and figure it out that way.
Yeah, and there's no scenario where in 2 years we're like, wow, that Russell Wilson thing didn't work, but hey, good job. They did a good job at rebuilding and turning it around quickly. Like if it doesn't work, they're screwed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Russell Wilson has to play well, and I think adding players like McGlinchey and P Ryan, I think, is a solid running back. I think those moves kind of help.
Yeah, I think so as well. The Detroit Lions, again, the America's team, Detroit Lions, I thought had a good offseason.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job of addressing needs while not overpaying for the needs that they addressed. The Cameron Sutton one is my favorite, I think, here, but CJ Gardner-Johnson also for just $8 million feels like a bit of a steal. Even if I think he might be a tad overrated as a player. He's still a good player, and so getting him at $8 million is, I think, good. And then I think Emmanuel Mosley is an interesting flyer. Getting him on a 1-year deal from San Francisco. David Montgomery is very fascinating and how he will fit in with all of that. So as a whole, I'm going to give this a win.
Yeah, this is definitely a win for me too. I did like Jamal Williams and what he did for this team and kind of the energy he brought to it. I mean, he was everyone's favorite during Hard Knocks too, and all that, right? So that hurts a little bit, but at the same time, I think Montgomery's a good back, and I think he fits too. And then they got better on the defense without a doubt. Anzalone's a solid linebacker coming back. Sutton is a good corner. They could have made splashier moves or tried to make splashier moves, and I don't know how much they tried. I think in our offseason preview, I mentioned, someone like potentially a, Jamel Dean would be the home run signing. This is a team that could definitely go after a Jamel Dean type of player. And instead, they got Sutton, and then they were able to also do that and take a chance on Emmanuel Mosley, which, when Emmanuel Mosley is healthy, he's a really good cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
They just need him to be healthy, which we don't know it's going to happen. But if he can stay healthy this season, that's all of a sudden a really good cornerback room. And you're looking at a defense that's getting better and a team that's getting better across the board. This is a really nice group.
Yeah, the Lions. Who would have thought Lions might be favored to win the division next year? Probably are, I would think. I guess, how do people view Minnesota? Let's talk about a team that usually is the favorite of the winning that division. The Packers, who haven't had a ton free agency wise, but the obvious thing, the Aaron Rodgers stuff, which to me, I mean, again, I don't care about really losing Alan Lazard or re-signing Javon Reed. It's the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Assuming you do lose Aaron Rodgers, and apparently they might not even get that much draft capital back, this is a loss for me.
Yeah, this is an easy loss. Whether you as a Packers fan watching this show right now, is a fan of the Aaron Rodgers offseason spectacle or not, I get it if you're not a fan. He's a fantastic quarterback, and that's going to hurt to replace.
Mm-hmm.
And, it puts a lot of pressure on Jordan Love to be good. And you know what? I agree with you. Like, Lazard's not that important in the grand scheme of things as far as receivers go, but like, there's all of a sudden now a lot of pressure on Jordan Love, who's very inexperienced, Christian Watson in year 2, and Romeo Doubs in year 2 to be really good players on this team. And we don't know how good any of these guys are. These are all really young and unproven players that we're now putting in the spotlight, telling them that they have to be awesome for a team that's used to a lot of success. This could be a really down year for Green Bay.
Yeah. And we don't have to spend forever on the Packers, I don't think, because we got into detail about them last week talking about the Aaron Rodgers stuff. But who knows? Maybe Jordan Love will hit, but it's just a big question mark now. Whereas if he still had Rodgers, it wouldn't have been. The Texans are hilarious because every offseason they just have like a laundry list of players that they've like done stuff with. Like, I don't know what they do, but they're the king of the 1-year prove it deal for like solid, okay players. They've done it again this year. I don't know. I like Dalton Schultz for $9 million. I like, they re-signed Tunsil. I like the Shaq Mason trade. I guess it's a win, but like, I don't know if it's moving the needle.
Yeah. Here's my question. If this was all they were going to get for Brandon Cooks at this point of this point of his career, why didn't they trade him at the trade deadline?
I don't know. I have no, and I also don't love the trade at this point in general. I'm assuming what happened was he went to the front office and said, like, I'm assuming there's something we don't know, because like what we know now doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate that. Like, you could have got way more for him if you just traded him at the trade deadline. What did you need Brandon? You sucked anyways. Why didn't you just get rid of Brandon Cook at the time and just rebuild then, because you're already rebuilding. I mean, there are things I do like. Like Laramie Tunsil's a good player. They re-signed him, gave him that extension. That's a nice move, I think. You look at, like you said, Schultz is good. Shaq Mason's going to help this offensive line, but I'm not even convinced this team actually got better with these moves, though, because they lost their number one receiver and they still don't have a number one receiver. They don't have a number one quarterback. This is an L for me.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I did not like the Brandon Cooks trade at all, especially because like at this point, for only a fifth and sixth round pick or whatever it was, like I'm with you where it's like you're about to draft a quarterback. We assume use that pick on keep Brandon Cooks who could help that pick develop. There's value in that. That's worth a fifth and sixth round pick easily for me.
Yeah, it just seemed very bizarre. I didn't get it. And I mean, I don't know. I do think they made some true. There's some nice moves here, but I think overall it's a collective L because I still
Yeah.
don't know what this franchise is trying to do.
Yeah, but again, we never know what that franchise is trying to do.
Yeah, that's true.
The Indianapolis Colts, another team that is in a bit of a bind right now, didn't do a ton. Again, I don't know what really they could do in this situation. They lost Bobby Okereke. They added Samson Ebukam. So a lot of tough names. Got Matt Gay like that, but again, I don't know. Not really doing a lot. I'll give this one. They added Gardner Minshew, who is already their backup, even though they don't have a starting quarterback on the team, but we just know he's the backup. This is, it's a complete whatever. I guess I'll go loss here because I went win for the last whatever.
I went lost just because I think Okereke is a pretty good player. And, for a team that doesn't like to spend money in free agency all that much, getting the highest paid kicker of all time is pretty funny. And I'm not even convinced it's like, I'm not even convinced he's the like top 3 kicker in the NFL. He's the highest paid in the league. So yeah, that's a loss for me.
Yeah. All right, whatever. Let's move on. Again, I don't know. I don't care that much about the. Sorry, Colts fans. But what do you? Colts don't do anything in free agency. What do we have to talk about with that?
Yeah. Hey, they got a receiver, Isaiah McKenzie. How do you feel about that?
There you go. Yeah, finally got a receiver in free agency. They did it. The Jaguars here. Not a ton of moves here, but they lost a couple guys. They lost Jawan Taylor. They lost Arden Key. I think it's kind of a win that you didn't pay Jawan Taylor $20 million a year for 4 years. I think that's probably you feel okay about that. I think losing Arden Key hurts them, though. I think that there was a noticeable, again, not to do the Trayvon Walker thing I do every time I talk about the Jaguars, but there was a noticeable swing, I thought, when Arden Key was out there instead of Walker. I would have liked to keep him, especially for 3 years, $7 million a year. That's fine value for a rotational player. I think he's better than just a rotational player. So I'm going to go loss.
That's fair. Yeah, I go slight loss too because it is a position now they're going to have to address again, even though they addressed it with the number 1 pick last year. I think they got slightly worse, but at the same time, I don't think there was a ton of moves really to make from this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I think they kind of have what they have. I wouldn't be surprised if they are in the trade market for one of these receivers or something like that, but it's still to be determined with me for that. So I do think it's a slight loss because right now they're slightly worse.
Yeah, their move was trading for Calvin Ridley. That was their offseason move. And if you count that, then they'd be a win.
Yeah, that's true. I almost forgot he came back. But that doesn't count for me because it was last season. So
right, exactly. Let's go to the team that added Jawan Taylor, which again, Jawan Taylor has quickly become a villain on this channel. Sorry, Jawan Taylor. I just don't love that contract. I don't get why you would rather have him than Orlando Brown Jr. I don't think that that's a great move. The other moves, like again, you lost Juan Thornhill, you lost Andrew Wiley, you lost Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think those are fine. You lost McCole Hardman to the Jets. I'm okay with all that stuff. I actually like the Mike Edwards signing. I think that's a good value signing. Surprised he only got $3 million on the open market. But as a whole, this is currently, I'm just going to loss because I don't love the Jawan Taylor move.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I do have it as a loss. Overall, like you said, Edwards is a pretty good signing, but it's another one where it's like he's good, but now he's theoretically being asked to replace Juan Thornhill, who I thought was really good last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he's good enough to replace Juan Thornhill. So that's a little bit of a question mark for me. You're replacing theoretically Orlando Brown Jr. at $16 million a year for Jawan Taylor at $20 million a year. That feels like a loss. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster was really good for this team last year, so that feels like a loss right now. And now this team, I still think they're going to be a contender. I'm not, going to say
Of
it's
course.
disaster or anything like that, but at the same time, you have probably wide receiver you're going to have to address in the draft. Right tackle you're going to have to address in the draft. Now, with Andrew Wiley, you probably would have had to address that anyways, but now you don't have that right tackle option. So that's a question. And then I still think they're going to need pieces in the secondary. So I do think they have some things they need to address this offseason still in the draft.
Yeah. And recently they've done a great job at doing that. So I trust the Chiefs will be able to do it. I still think they're the Super Bowl favorites, but that's just how far ahead they were for me. That even with a loss, they still I think are Super Bowl favorites.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
Let's go to the Raiders from again, division rival here. You could argue a win here. I'm going a slight loss here. I think it's a loss. I don't think it's crazy, but I think going from Carr to Garoppolo was a downgrade. I do. I think that Garoppolo does some nice things, has pretty much shown that in a good situation he can succeed, has maybe the most inflated passer rating in NFL history, but still has had success, in a good situation. I think the Raiders are hoping they can build a good situation by adding Jacoby Myers. I like the Marcus Epps addition as well. But as a whole, and they added Austin Hooper as well today, which I think is a kind of a good buy low move. But I don't know. I don't know. Well, I think that they're probably going to be all right next year. I just don't know what we're doing here. And we had a whole discussion on this, I believe, last week about what's the goal of this. But for me, I just don't know what the plan is here, and that's why I'm going loss.
Yeah. I have it as a slight loss for now, just because I look through it all and it's like, okay, you traded your star tight end Darren Waller, who 2 years ago was your team superstar.
Mm-hmm.
You traded him for basically nothing because it all of a sudden quickly turned into a bad contract because he was hurt last season, to bring in Austin Hooper, which I think Austin Hooper's all right. It's a major downgrade from Darren Waller when he's healthy. You bring in Jacoby Myers, who I think is fine, but it just has a lot of overlap with Hunter Renfrow for me, so that doesn't make a ton of sense either. And then I don't know. I look through that and it doesn't make sense before I get to the quarterback thing, which I'm actually fine with the quarterback move. Like, I think Derek Carr is a better player than Jimmy Garoppolo. But if the conversation is Jimmy Garoppolo at 1 year, $24 million guaranteed, basically, or Derek Carr at 3 years, $100 million guaranteed, or not guaranteed. 3 years, $100 million guaranteed, 4 for 150 total. I think the Garoppolo move might be argued as a better move. It's just a 1 year thing. And you can still draft quarterback in the draft this season too. So I do think that's kind of a wash for me, but at the same time, I think it's a collective L just because the other moves don't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I don't. And again, we could do a full segment on that. We already did it last week, so if you want to hear more thoughts, check that out. The Chargers, all these teams, all these AFC West teams in the same alphabetical situation. Who knew? The Chargers. So this is maybe unfair, but like, why didn't the Chargers just throw a bag of money at Jacoby Myers? Like, isn't that exactly what the Chargers offense could use? Is like this guy who can go can be that type of player. I feel like that's exactly what they could use. They didn't end up making that happen. Chargers haven't done a lot. They did add Eric Kendricks, who's a player I like. I don't know. Again, wrong side of 30 now. How much does he have left in him? But still, find him interesting. As a whole, Chargers, have a little bit of money. Didn't really do much. Maybe there's a plan. Maybe, again, I think they'd be a great Odell Beckham Jr. team. I'd love for them to do that. But until they get a third receiver, Chargers.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a weird offseason because they don't address that receiver position. And even if it's an Isaiah McKenzie who goes to Indianapolis, that feels like still an upgrade over what they have at this moment. And why wouldn't people want to play with Justin Herbert?
Right.
If it's the option of playing for whoever's going to play quarterback for Indianapolis next year or Justin Herbert, and living in Los Angeles, it feels like it should be an easy win to get a lot of these guys in free agency, and they didn't get any of them. So I don't know exactly what the plan was for that. I'm with you, but I don't. And then the other part of this is this whole Austin Eckler thing where he wants this huge contract, I guess, and now he's requesting a trade. in seeking trade opportunities. So then you have to address that. And like, look, I'm not a big paying running backs person, but Austin Eckler is a good player, and that's something they're going to have to address if they do get rid of him, which I do actually think this is a good running back draft. So maybe it is the opportunity to get rid of him and not have to pay him. So it is going to be weird to see how this offseason plays out. This is another one where it feels like it could be a to be determined for me if it was actually fair grades and not just winners and losers throughout. But it's a slight loss for me because they haven't addressed those positions.
Yeah, but it also feels like this could have been like the perfect Dalton Schultz team, right?
Yeah.
Sticks with Kellen Moore. Again, Schultz went for barely anything. I don't. Again, maybe they view him differently than we do. But yeah, want to move on?
Yeah.
Let's go to the Rams, staying in LA, of course, because we're doing this alphabetically by city. The Rams, who this is the loss for me because I just don't love the Jalen Ramsey trade. I just didn't like that. I don't think it made sense. They won a Super Bowl 2 years ago because of the Ramsey Cup Donald like trio of like superstars that were able to add so much value, not at the quarterback position, and then also they got great play from Stafford in the playoffs. Like I don't think that was a good move, especially for how little they got for him. The other moves I don't even know if are really worth mentioning. Okay, losing Matt Gay hurts a little too. Losing Baker Mayfield, I guess, could potentially hurt their backup situation. As a whole, it's a loss for me.
It is a loss for me too. That Ramsey trade still makes very little sense given the money. I mean, I don't know. Like this team went all in. Like, look, you won the Super Bowl. Congratulations, and that's obviously close. That's obviously what you want at the end of the day. That banner's going to fly forever. But at the same time, like, Ashawn Robinson still hasn't been addressed. Bobby Wagner got cut. Taylor Rapp, we don't know if he's going to come back. I mean, those are all good players on this defense that potentially none of those guys come back. What happens to this team if Leonard Floyd, Bobby Wagner, Ashawn Robinson, Troy Hill, and Taylor Rapp aren't back? Could be essentially disasterful offseason for what was once an elite defense.
Yeah, I think the main thing is thank God that Brian Burns trade did not go through, because if the Rams didn't have their first round pick for the next 2 years, this would be looking really tough. The fact they get their first round pick next year at least. That's what you got to look forward to.
Yeah, I do. I guess you do have that, but yeah, I mean, this looks bleak right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, but again, I don't know. Maybe just go watch the championship DVD again, and you'll feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
The Miami Dolphins, a team that the Rams traded Ramsey to, which I think you have to kind of just, to me, this is a win because of the Ramsey trade. The one other move, a lot of smaller moves. The other one I kind of, I like adding Braxton Berrios. I think that's smart. But the other one that I think that I would highlight is the Mike White signing is interesting to me because I thought for sure they were going to go after like a Jacoby Brissett, right? Go after someone who is like a known quantity backup because of the Tua injury history. They go the opposite route and kind of go with White, who in a couple of games has looked like a Hall of Famer, but in most of his time has not, has looked, has had really bad games as well at the NFL level. And when he's been in a good situation, has looked solid. Maybe the Dolphins are hoping they can replicate that if he gets in there, but it's a bit of an interesting move. If you're paying $8 million a year on a backup to get Mike White as that backup. But it's the Ramsey trade, adding Vic Fangio, it's a win for me.
Yeah, that's definitely a win. The Ramsey trade, I mean, that Ramsey and Howard secondary is just scary to think about, especially when my team has to play them twice. I'm not looking forward to it. There was a couple weird ones, like, I don't know, like, it seemed like they kind of just gave up on Mike Gesicki last year. Like, he didn't, I know, obviously when you have Hill and Waddle, like, a lot of guys' numbers are going to go down next to them. But, like, I don't know. It just felt like they gave up on him last year. And I still think he's a good player. And then he got signed for a pretty cheap deal, too. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But overall, I think top to bottom, this is a way better team now than it was, even last season. And I thought they were good last season. So, yeah, this is a good team. This is a good team. And I'm pretty interested to see what they do next season. I agree with you with the Mike White thing. But at the same time, like, from what we've seen with Mike White, he's able to drop back, throw the ball quickly. He should be able to run this offense effectively well, right? Like it's a pretty nice, it's a pretty nice Tua, comparison where if you want your backup quarterback to run an offense similar to your starting quarterback, I think he can run a lot of the same stuff Tua does.
Yeah, I think so as well. The Trent Sherfield thing, I think, also hurts a little bit as well. I mean, how many times last year was it just like on a big play, it's all of a sudden Trent Sherfield coming up and making a play? Like that happened,
Yeah.
it hurts, but it's not a devastating blow.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is the downgrade to from Sherfield to Berrios that extreme?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But it's a little it's a thing worth noting, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh-huh. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings here. The Vikings are a team that, we're again always fascinating. What are they going to do? They lose your hero, Dalvin Tomlinson. They lose they get rid of Adam Thielen as well. They, add some interesting pieces. Your other hero, Byron Murphy, along with they get Josh Oliver from Baltimore. They lose Patrick Peterson. So again, a lot of moves happening. Losing Eric Kendricks, but they add Marcus Davenport, who I can't believe he only went for 13 million. I thought he was going to get 20 plus. Surprised that the NFL, I guess, I get it, coming off of a half sack season, but I still think he's a good player who just like the sacks haven't been there, which, they have some years, but just not last year. I don't know. I think looking at the players they've lost and the players they've added, I think they've probably lost more than they've added, but I don't think it's massively so. So I'll go L here as well, but a light L.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a slight L for me. I don't know why. Yeah, Dalvin Tomlinson is just a good football player. I don't know why he's
Sure.
my hero because I appreciate good defensive tackle
I
play.
feel like you've on at least like a dozen podcasts highlighted Dalvin Tomlinson's play.
It's a good player.
Sure.
Anyway, besides the point, I do think it's a slight L because they do lose a player like him. Um, you know, what Adam Thielen was and wasn't last season, like, obviously, he wasn't the same. We talked about that. We talked about him with the Carolina bit. But now that's kind of a void, I think, in that Minnesota offense where, is that going to be Jalen Rieger's role now?
Right.
I'm not looking forward to that if that's the case. Um, you know, I just look at that, and that's a question for me. The Byron Murphy and Patrick Peterson thing kind of feels like a wash where it's like Patrick Peterson was really good last season. I think it's fair to be skeptical if Patrick Peterson's going to do that again this season, especially at his age and just his overall consistent play over the last, 4 or 5 years. I'm with you. I think the Davenport move's pretty good, but yeah, I mean, collective, it kind of, I don't know. This defense kind of just feels like a lateral move to me. Like you lost guys like Peterson, who was good last season, despite how bad that secondary was. A guy like Kendricks, who I thought was good last season and still a good player, you lose him. In Tomlinson, who's a good player, you lose him. And even though I like those guys, you lose them. I also kind of like Davenport. I kind of like Murphy. And it just feels like a kind of, unilateral move.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything you just said. Let's go to the Patriots, why don't we? Kyle, your team. Take it away.
All right. So there's a lot of moves here. There's a lot to discuss. The Patriots, I think collectively looked like a pretty quiet offseason, but I do think it's a good offseason. So I think there's two ways you could kind of look at this. The question would be like, if you viewed the Patriots offseason as a loss, it's probably because you're looking at the Jets and the Dolphins and what they did, and it's collectively significantly better than what the Patriots did. Because they added superstar talent theoretically in Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Rodgers. So that would be a loss because the division's a lot harder to get through. But I think if you look through this roster, this is a pretty good football roster, and it's pretty much an emblematic of a Patriots roster. Like they paid Juju Smith-Schuster less than Jacoby Myers, and I think you could say Juju Smith-Schuster is better at certain things than Jacoby Myers. They're pretty close. They're the same age. It's basically the same exact player. Um, but I think, if you look at Juju Smith-Schuster's yards out of the catch stuff, I think that's going to help this offense because they didn't have any yak really at all last season. And I think that's going to be important. I think if you look at this safety group, yes, Devin McCourty did retire. That's going to be tough to replace. But they bring back a guy like Jabril Peppers. There's young players on that roster in safety that are going to be pretty good. They bring back Jalen Mills after cutting him and get him on cheaper, and he's going to be a safety next season. So that's going to be interesting. And then another thing, too, that was kind of underrated and not very Patriots-esque is like this special teams was a disaster last year. And how bad this special teams was. You bring back a guy like Mac Wilson, who was a pretty good special teamer for them last year. Matt Slater does come back. He was a good special teamer as usual. And then you get a guy like Chris Board, who also is a fantastic special teamer, along with just, they're deeper at offensive tackle with Calvin Anderson, Riley Reif, that sort of thing. Good on the defense still. I think this is a better team than it was last season.
Yeah, I have it as a slight win as well. I like Jacoby Myers more than you do. I think that he's a significant step up from what Juju Smith-Schuster has shown over his career. I think that there's things to like about Smith-Schuster. I just like Myers better as a player. I like the Gesicki move a lot. Like you said, a lot of little moves, very Patriots-esque offseason.
Yeah, this team is still lacking a top end option. But if they're able to get, they're in a lot of these Jerry Jeudy and DeAndre Hopkins rumors. If it's that, or if it's drafting a receiver at 14 who ends up being a stud, if it's like a Zay Flowers, if it's a Quentin Johnson, we'll get into the draft stuff, all that kind of stuff. It's one of those guys, or if it's a top end receiver that's on the market right now, that Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Gesicki, Kendrick Bourne's still on the roster, Tyquan Thornton as a second round pick last year. That could all of a sudden quickly become a pretty good receiving room with the right move.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The New Orleans Saints, I don't know. Again, some smaller things like the losing David Onyemata, like we talked about. But as I said, I don't necessarily hate not having that contract. I think losing Davenport does hurt a decent chunk. I like Derek Carr though enough that I'll still give him a win here. Lost Andy Dalton as well, but I'll say win.
I think that's a win because this NFC South felt like it was ready to be kind of taken. And it looks like they took it, honestly. Like,
yeah,
I know the Bucs did a few things to kind of, weather the storm a little bit. Even the quarterback downgrade is so substantial, though, that it feels like they're definitely a step behind. And yeah, I mean, if you just look across the board, they're going to be pretty good, I think, next season. And if Carr looks like 2 years ago, Derek Carr, they could be really good all of a sudden. The Davenport one is probably, like you said, the one move where it's like that hurts a little bit, but you figured eventually there was going to be some casualties with their salary cap. And if you looked at the guys who had been free agencies, I think, over the past few years, I'd rather lose Marcus Davenport than players like Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, or trading a guy like Marshawn Lattimore. So it feels like they can weather that one better than some of their other guys on the roster.
Yeah, I think I agree. The New York Giants here, New York Giants did some moves I really like. The Darren Waller signing or trade, excuse me, I think was a steal. I think he should have gone for should have taken more capital to get him on your team. So they should feel good about that. Like the Raheem Nunez Roaches deal, I think it's a small one that should work. I like I think Bobby Okereke should be good for them. But they paid Daniel Jones 4 years, $160 million. So this is a loss for me.
Yeah. Oh man. I even like, if I go down the list too, like I think Paris Campbell's a solid football player too. And getting Slayton back, I think, is a pretty good deal. Like you said, Okereke, you get Darren Waller. There's things like that I think, yeah, I'll put it as a slight loss because I do question that Daniel Jones contract. But I think everything else around it looks pretty good.
Yeah, but again, I mean, we always talk about the quarterback is where it starts, and Daniel Jones has, in a career year, in a contract year, shown he can be a top 16 quarterback in football. That's not worth $40 million for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, if it was Daniel Jones 4 years for $100 million or $110 million, this would be a win of an offseason. But because it's 160, it's a loss.
Yeah, I think so as well. The Jets, again, quarterback position matters. You add Aaron Rodgers, it's a win. Who knows what's going to happen? Guy's 40 years old, and apparently he was 90% sure he was going to retire before he entered the darkness this offseason, which, what a sentence I just said. It's a win for me. Again, adding Alan Lazard, fine. In a vacuum, I wouldn't love that contract, but because of the Rodgers stuff, I get it. Lost Nathan Shepard, lost Sheldon Rankins. They obviously made some moves today, getting rid of Elijah Moore, but adding McCole Hardman. But again, lost Braxton Berrios. They lost James Robinson. They added Aaron Rodgers. This is a win.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be a win because Aaron Rodgers puts them in contention, which is what they
Mhm.
weren't before they added Aaron Rodgers. I think you can nitpick some of the smaller moves. Like that's the one thing I think you can go through. Like if you said the receiving core was going to go from Elijah Moore and Braxton Berrios to Alan Lazard and McCole Harmon, you'd probably say that's a slight loss, right? Like
Mhm.
just slightly. I don't know. And then I mean I like Sheldon Rankins. They lose him, but at the same time, you added Aaron Rodgers and you're a lot better because of that. So that's a win.
Yeah, and again, another one where if you want to hear more of our thoughts on that, we spent probably 20 minutes or so breaking that down last week. So check out that show. Let's go to the Eagles. The Eagles were they walked into the offseason with a big L, right? Just because of how many free agents they had to sign. I like what they did, though. So I guess, can that count as a win then? Because what it got worse, I think they handled this well. I think the players they decided to keep, they kept Darius Slay after we thought they were going to get rid of him. They kept James Bradbury. They get Jason Kelsey back in the mix here. Fletcher Cox is the one where I don't know if you needed to keep Fletcher Cox. I think that, I do kind of look at this as you have a little bit of cap space. They could have, let Fletcher Cox walk and re-sign Javon Hargrave. I would have liked that move a lot more. But again, it's also kind of the emotional factor when it comes to Fletcher Cox. So they lost a good chunk of players. They lost Andre Dillard. They lost Miles Sanders, Isaac Seumalo. Both their linebackers, TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. Lost Marcus Epps. I mean, they lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. They lost a good chunk of players, but we knew they were going to lose a good chunk of players. Also, big fan of the Rashad Penny signing. So I'm giving this a win just based on, the weather the storm, I thought well.
Yeah, I do think it's a slight win because, like you said, they did weather the storm. There were a few ones that, like, I feel like that it's kind of a bummer they lost. Like, I think Edwards was so good for that defense, and fit his role really well. And then I think the one that they're going to be kind of like bummed out that they lost is Samalo because I do think he's a really nice compliment to Kelsey because he's so huge. It's a nice combo, and
Mm-hmm.
losing that I think hurts. But I think overall, like you said, there was there was no way they were coming out of this offseason with more good players than what they started with because they had so many good players on the market that it's it feels like a win that they were able to kind of weather the storm, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the team that Isaac Samala went to. Why don't we? The Pittsburgh Steelers, who it's weird with the Steelers, what they did. Because they lost Cameron Sutton. Okay, that hurts. They added Isaac Samala. Okay, that's good. They added Patrick Peterson, another move I like. They signed Larry Ogunjobi to a $10 million deal. He's just the ultimate, he's just going to keep getting these $10 million a year deals. I think he's like an okay player, but I've never gotten to Ogunjobi stuff. I don't get it. Feels like a fine player that for some reason gets these $10 million contracts all the time. But for the Steelers, I don't know. There's things I like about this move, but I feels like it's maybe a slight I guess slight step forward. I don't know. I'll go loss because I can't decide, and I feel like neutral should really be losses.
uh yeah, I was struggling with this one too. I'm gonna go loss. I don't know. The Sutton to Peterson move feels like a downgrade to me. Like I said, I'm skeptical Peterson's gonna be able to be this good again next season. It's just, I think the change I just, year to year consistency with him as kind of a ball hawk guy is uncertain. And I feel like Sutton's a better player. I just
Mm-hmm.
feel that way. So I do think that's going to be questionable. I think Samalo, like I said, is a really good signing. Um, but yeah, I mean, the Ogunjobi thing doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And just, I don't know. It, none of it feels incredibly consequential, but except for getting Samalo. But I do think that it's just kind of a weird offseason. So I have it as a loss.
Yeah, exactly. And in a vacuum, I kind of like the Patrick Peterson signing. Like, okay, go take a flyer on this guy, but it's just like he's not Cameron Sutton.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. 49ers. 49ers are an interesting team. The Javon Hargrave one, a blockbuster. Also, giving Sam Darnold 10 plus million is a bit of a surprise. But I don't know. I'll say it's a win because I just think Javon Hargrave on that defensive line is unfair, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's an incredible defensive line. So this is the interesting so is one of these quarterbacks out this offseason then?
Well, I think they're just going to go one of the quarterbacks.
Yes, one of the
I
younger
think,
ones.
no, I think they'll just go three quarterbacks.
Yeah, I guess it's possible. Feels like a lot to pay for a third quarterback.
It is, but did you see what happened last year?
Yeah, that's true.
I
This
mean,
team,
that's what they're doing is they're making sure they get at least solid quarterback play. They might get a
yeah,
fourth one.
yeah, yeah. Might need five, honestly. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, look, I mean, there's a few things. Like I said, this is another one where you can nitpick a few things. Like I think Alshire would have been worth $5 million. They didn't get him back. I think you could look at like Emmanuel Mosley is another guy who, when he's healthy, is good. Jimmy Ward,
Hmm.
I think, is a solid safety. So like you
Hmm.
can go and kind of nitpick some of these moves, but at the same time, you know, I think bringing back Brendel was important for them. They were able to do that, and then they got a splash move in Javon Hargrave. So that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and 49ers fans don't love Mike McGlinchey. I don't know how you say his name. Never, I never will. I'll never figure that out. That's just something that information that will never keep in my brain. But losing him. I mean, listen, Niners fans aren't huge on him or anything, but I think he was a good player, and losing him will still hurt.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. All right. Four teams left. The Seattle Seahawks, the division rival of the 49ers, the team that lost to the 49ers in the playoffs. Of course, they're the team that went out and paid Draymond Jones 17 million a year. It's like you're looking at like the projections, like really he's going to get that much, and then it's like, of course, Seattle is all over that kind of a deal. Also adding Jerron Reed. Listen, they love their interior defensive linemen. That's what they try and do here. That's what Seattle is into, but that's not how I love building a team. So I'm just going to go loss here.
Unless it's an elite interior defensive lineman, which I just don't think those guys are.
Like
Um,
Dalvin Tomlinson.
yeah, exactly. If it was
Hmm.
Tomlinson, I mean, he basically, I mean, his deal's more expensive than Tomlinson's if I'm looking at it right. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think he's a worse player than Tomlinson.
Hmm.
That's besides the point. I mean, look, I think I like the Julian Love move. Like, I think he's a good player, and I think he's gonna,
Sure.
help. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, collectively, I think it's a slight loss because I don't know, they lost. They added, guys who I just don't think are that impactful, and they paid one of them pretty impactful money.
Yeah. Again, but the NFL. This is he's one of those guys the NFL just loves, Jermont Jones. There's
Yeah,
certain guys like that. Like again, same
yeah,
thing with like I talked about earlier to Larry Ogunjobi. It's like some guys are just like, oh, interior defensive lineman with and he's a good player. Like he's not like a bad player. I just think that that's an overpay.
yeah. I would agree with that.
Hmm. And I think more people would talk about it if anyone paid attention to interior defensive linemen.
You don't get that a whole lot, do you?
No, no.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a whole lot of movement to me there. I just feel like that there is better moves to make if you wanted someone for that position.
Yeah. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, were able to keep a couple of the guys we thought could go. Levante David and Jamal Dean felt like they might be out the door. They were not. Also kept Anthony Nelson and added, Baker Mayfield, who is an interesting piece to keep on the roster. They did still lose some guys. Sean Murphy Bunting was a good number 3 for them, especially in the postseason run. Raheem Nunez-Roches, who I mentioned in the Giants section, I think was an underrated piece. But also Mike Edwards, who I mentioned in the Kansas City Chiefs segment. Added Chase Edmonds. Interested to see how that will go. But as a whole, it's a big win for me because the Jamal Dean and Levante David signings are big ones, and they got them for pretty affordable deals.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like if you're including the Tom Brady retirement in the offseason, then it's a loss, right? Because that obviously changes the whole course of the franchise where they're
Right.
trying to compete for
Hmm.
Super Bowls and now they're just probably not, barring something, spectacular. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, this was another one of those teams kind of similar to Philadelphia where it felt like they were going to take some L's just because of the amount of people that were on the market. And it
Hmm.
feels like they did a pretty good job of weathering the storm because I'd rather keep Dean than Murphy Bunting. They kept Dean. David's, a lifelong piece, should retire a Bucks jersey. They kept him. And then, Mike Edwards is a good player, but at the same time, like, he's expendable to me. So
Hmm.
I think, like, you could say, well, they lost key players. It's a loss, but at the same time, given what was on the market and given what they were going to lose, I do think it's a win.
Yeah, I think I agree. Let's go to the Titans now. Two teams left. Titans, they added some interesting pieces. So they lost Nate Davis, but they added Andre Dillard from Philadelphia. They also added Arden Key, who I talked about as, part of why I gave the Jaguars a loss is because they did not re-sign him. So $7 million a year feels like a good value signing for a team that I think could use an edge rusher. I think this is a good move for them. Again, some interesting things like losing guys like DeMarcus Walker, Robert Woods, David Long, not like massive deals, and they added Sean Murphy-Bunting, who I just mentioned. Also lost Austin Hooper, who I mentioned earlier on as well. This doesn't feel like it's a big swing in either direction for me. I guess I like the Arden Key signing enough. I'll give it a win.
Yeah, I do have it as a win too because I mean, if you just look at it, like I think Key is better than DeMarcus Walker. And so
Mm-hmm.
that'll help. And like, I do think a guy like Sean Murphy Bunting was probably expendable to Tampa, given the other players that were on the market. I do think it's a pretty nice signing for Tennessee, given the value. So I think that's fine. And you look at that, you look at Al-Shaair, I think this defense could be pretty good next season.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what this offense is going to look like. I have no idea. But I do think the defense got better. So I take that as a win.
Yeah, and so far they have not traded away A.J. Brown this offseason, so going better than last year.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Although they might trade Derrick Henry, but might not be the worst idea in the world.
Honestly, at this point, like, yeah, I'm kind of with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk some balls. Ending with the Washington football
Best for
team.
last.
Yes. Odd off season for them. I don't know what they're. I guess I like claiming Cameron Dantzler off waivers, but Deron Payne. I like Deron Payne as a player, but I don't think he's quite been as good these past couple years as he was right when he entered the league. So for 4 years, $90 million for that kind of money, I would have rather found a trade partner there personally. But again, kind of player the NFL loves. Andrew Wiley, again, bit odd, giving him $7 million a year for a guy who had a great Super Bowl, but has not had great success at the NFL level, and was one of the players who was highly criticized in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay when he was the starting tackle. Then Jacoby Brissett, they're giving $10 million a year for. I do have to wonder, like, are we really doing the Sam Howell thing? That seems like it's the case, unless they end up with Lamar Jackson. We're really going to give Sam Howell a try here. Why didn't you have him play last year then, if that's what you were going to do? I don't know. They're a weird team. I'm giving them an L here.
I actually went slight win. I think Jacoby Brissett's better than any of the quarterbacks they had last season, so that's a win for me.
But like, what's the point?
What?
I mean, what's the point of why?
I mean, it's not inconceivable they can make a playoffs. We just saw the Giants do it last year.
I guess so, but I mean, I don't know. Is the jump with Jacoby Brissett really that much better than what they had last year? I mean, what they had last year wasn't a mess. It wasn't good, but it wasn't a mess.
Yeah, but now it's passable. I feel like so at the same time, like
Sure.
this was a bottom 6 quarterback room last year, legitimately. So I mean, like the fact that they don't have that now, because I think Brissett's at least better than that. Brissett played better than both their guys last year, and this team still almost made the playoffs. Like, I do think that's going to help. And like, yeah, I don't love the Wiley signing, but like, I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But the Payne's still a pretty good player. But yeah, and I just think like if you add Brissett to this offense and like McLaurin's still good. I mean, they went 8-8-1 with bad quarterback play last year. It's not inconceivable that with average quarterback play this season, they could make the playoffs.
Yeah, but I guess I just think with the quarterbacks that were on the market this offseason, is chasing a 7 seed really the goal here?
Well, that's the question. That's $1 million question. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Would this team actually be capable? Like, we both kind of like this roster. I think we both like this roster for a couple of years now.
Sure.
Is it actually capable for this team specifically to bottom out like we would have wanted it to? Like, I don't know a scenario where Washington ends up with the worst record in the league. I think it's too good of a roster. Like, I still think even if it's Sam Howell next season, which I still think it's a possibility he plays, which if he beats out Jacoby Brissett, we have to assume he's also better than the quarterbacks they had last year. But like, if you look at like Brian Robinson's going to be healthy to start this season. We like what we saw from him last year. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas. That's a very good receiving core. We look at this defensive line. We've talked about this defensive line with Young, Payne, Allen, Sweat as a very good group. And yeah, I don't know if this team could have actually bottomed out. And I don't think trading some of the young talented players that they have is worth bottoming out for one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, you talked me into it a little bit. I don't know if you need to bottom out, but I guess and I think Brissett is a good quarterback, and I guess the one thing I'll say is I like the fact that they're not doing. Feels like sometimes teams are big. Okay, we're getting someone to be our starting quarterback, so we have to pay him more money for like the motivation thing for other so our players believe in him. I like that they're not doing that. They're still just giving Brissett a backup quarterback money, and I don't know. I guess you're right in the sense that like. I didn't view it as they were competing. When I saw this, I said, "Oh, okay, this is their rebuild strategy." But if this is a way to get into the playoffs, it's not the worst idea in the world to be paying a quarterback low money and paying a quarterback backup money that's going to start and see how that works. They tried it with Ryan Fitzpatrick; he got hurt week 1 and was out for the year. They're trying it again here. I'm still going to put him as a loss though because I don't love the Wiley or Payne signings.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, I think at the end, like, I wouldn't be shocked if this team's like not even, especially given the state of the NFC. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked if this team's like a 6 seed because, like,
Yeah.
honestly, you look at the two teams at the top of the NFC East; those are both going to be pretty good teams. San Francisco, we can safely assume is going to be a very good team. Uh, we think New Orleans is going to be a good team with Derek Carr. So that's probably one team that's looking at 4, and then you're looking at potentially Detroit as the winners of the NFC North. Who else are we confident, like 100% confident is going to be good in the NFC?
Not a lot of teams.
And then, yeah, I mean, I just think like if Brissett plays like he did last season in Cleveland, I wouldn't be shocked at all. This is the 6th best team in the NFC, which is
Yeah.
like, sure. I mean, do you want to be the 6th best team in the NFC is a question, but I wouldn't be shocked if they are.
Yeah, they're trying to sell the team, so I think trying to be competitive right now, at least look solid. I can see the logic behind it. So yeah, well said. You talked me into it a bit, Kyle.
All right, there we go. I got one right.
There you go. Yeah. All right, Kyle. That's our show. Let them know where we can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin. And make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yes, of course. If you like audio only podcast, anywhere you get the podcast, just search anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It should be available there. Make sure you subscribe, rate us, all that good stuff that people say you should do. Yeah. Kyle, final thoughts before we head out?
No, I think we just about touched it all. End of the NBA season here coming up, so that's some good stuff. And just chugging along into the off season.
Yes, we have Kieran, I believe is how you say his name in the chat. I never
Kieran?
know how to Kieran. I never know how to say your name,
Yeah.
so I usually just say we have a comment. Apologies about that. Says have a good week, Kyle. Is Kyle doing this show by himself?
I guess so. Yeah, Kieran, you have a good week too.
Oh,
And
okay.
you know what?
Kieran.
Kieran. Okay, fair enough. Kieran, have a good week too. I'm with you. There's going to be a boring F1 year. Red Bull's already running away with it.
Yeah. We'll tune in next week for our F1 podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna go deep dive into all 10 teams, right?
Yeah. No. Unfortunately, for if anyone got excited, no. We will not be doing that. Unfortunately, maybe one day. I never thought I'd get into soccer, and I got into it during the World Cup. So who knows? Maybe one day, Kyle.
Yeah, this isn't the year to do it. That's for sure.
Okay, gotcha. What makes a boring year?
Well, so basically, I mean, they
Oh God,
all
we're
have
doing a
these.
deep dive. That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, what makes a boring year?
we'll do 2 quick minutes. Basically, all these
Uh-huh.
teams present their cards at the beginning of the year. We see these teams test and go, and basically, you can have a pretty clear indication within the first couple of races of who's good and who's not. And usually, there's you know 1 or 2 teams that are ahead of everybody else. This year, it's one team is demonstrably ahead of everybody else. And
Gotcha.
the only interesting part of this is that because each team has 2 drivers for their car. Their car is way better than everybody else. So those two got their 2 drivers are going to be the 2 that are competing for a championship. But one of their guys always wins. So it's probably going to be they're letting that guy win and the other guy's going to finish second.
Okay, well there we go. There's our F1. So we did do some F1 talk. Who would have thought? Also, just letting people know what the schedule upcoming. We will be back 5 o'clock Eastern next week. At least that's the plan as of right now. And again, make sure you follow us all on Twitter to get the updates and stuff like that. But then we will have every podcast we have in April will be draft related. So just in 2 weeks from today, we'll have our draft podcast, where the way we typically do it, I believe, is do the top 10 quarterbacks of the draft, where I do my list, and then Kyle also makes a list and then sort of reacts to my list. And then on the 12th, it would be the top defensive players at each position. 19th would be top offensive players, and then 26th would be our mock draft the day before the draft, which is on the 27th. So we have a show. We'll figure out a show to do next week, and then we got draft content. So we're it's that time of the year.
Yeah, draft content. We both love draft content. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. Love college football. Love talking about these guys. This is gonna be fun stuff. We're looking for three definitely fun shows. We'll see if next week's fun too.
Yes, exactly. Or 4 fun shows, because we have 4 draft stuff.
Right, that's fair. We'll figure it.
But only 3 of them will be fun.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I'll take 3 out of 4. I think that's
nobody likes our mock draft show. The only one who likes it is us. Everyone just gets mad about our picks.
That's true. Yeah, but then I always go back to, I love that the most controversial one from 2 years ago was me picking Micah Parsons early. It's like, haha. We know some things.
That one, and the other one that was laughed at was that we drafted J.K. Dobbins to the Ravens in a mock draft, and that was ridiculed. And then the Ravens drafted J.K. Dobbins, so always good stuff.
Yeah, it's always fun, and we've had some bad takes too. But of course. But it's weird how it feels like our worst takes are almost like, yeah, that makes sense, and then like our bad takes are the ones that people are our good takes are the ones where people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Yes, should be fun. None of us know what we're doing, but we all pretend we do, which is what makes the draft so fun. Kyle, any final thoughts? I think I asked this earlier.
Yeah, you did. Still no final thoughts. You don't know, Mister. Yes, I did finish Mass Effect. Gotta say, pretty disappointed in Mass Effect 3. Did not get the ending that I wanted to the trilogy. But
oh no.
Yeah, just weekend. Gotta say,
you could talk about it more on your own YouTube channel.
I could if I had a YouTube channel.
One of these days we'll get you. Everyone, people are asking for it, Kyle.
I don't know what I talk about, but we'd figure it out.
You could football. Do a mock draft.
Mock draft every week.
Sure, that's basically what I do once we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe one day we'll figure it out. All right, let's get out of here.
Yes, let's get out of here again. Thank you to everybody. We do appreciate it. And until next time. Whatever. The intro, the outro. I'm just gonna start saying until next time. Have a good one, because this outro thing it's been eating at me for a year, Kyle.
A year, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Until next time, have a good one for everybody.
Peace.
Peace.